What's up and welcome to the Level Health Podcast. Today, Josh is interviewing Alex Cartmill. Alex is currently the general manager of Fitness Mentors and a freelance small business advisor in the fitness space. He's also the former head of product at the Personal Trainer Development Center and a co-developer of the Online Trainer Academy. Big thanks to Alex for coming on our show. Be sure to check out his website, alexcartmill.com, and his Instagram at alexcartmill, where you'll find lots of cute pictures of his dog, Charlie. We'll have both of those linked in the description below. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
So, Alex Cartmill, let's have a conversation. I think that most people that are going to be listening to this podcast will have heard of you in some way. But I wanted to just start out, if you don't mind, just giving us a quick down and dirty on who you are and why you do what you do, man.
Would love to, man. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. Really appreciate what you do and really appreciate your influence in the industry. So happy to be here. Super quick lowdown on me. I've been a personal trainer since 2013, so approaching a decade now, which is crazy. And did that for a little while. I taught at the National Personal Training Institute and have kind of fallen in love with coaching the coach. Ventured into that space probably after 2 years of personal training, had a full client roster, and just fell in love with helping other people fill theirs and using psychology and being like, no, man, you gotta speak to them like this. You gotta, understand this benefit, this barrier. And that's when I really started to fall in love with helping people help people, if that makes sense. So I ventured out and taught at the National Personal Training Institute, and then at the same time started working for the Personal Trainer Development Center, where I helped build the Online Trainer Academy and really was a business development kind of focus there. I ran that course and built the team and everything for about 4 years. And then this last year, I kind of went freelance, and I'm working for a company called Fitness Mentors, which is a fitness education company as well. And then also just kind of enjoying the freelance world and just kind of helping coaches build their businesses and not run themselves into the ground.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece in this industry. Do you, looking back now, of course, it's different in hindsight, but looking back, what was there hesitance or kind of just any really hesitance for you to make that switch from being a traditional in-person personal trainer? Because I remember very specifically when I thought, okay, I had the opportunity to go a different route, a slightly different route. And it felt weird to me because it felt like, okay, personal trainers, they work with people one-on-one, they're in a gym, things like that. Was that difficult for you to make that transition initially?
It's a good question. It wasn't actually, because I had concrete steps that I could take in order to have a destination. I got my job I interned at the National Personal Training Institute right out of college out in Washington, DC. And then I got a job back in Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, at the National Personal Training Institute there. And I was a personal trainer for, pretty much all of my college years. And so then right out of college, I had a job already coaching the coach. And so I didn't experience that hesitancy. And it's really interesting you asked that, because there also wasn't this the coaching the coach environment that there is now. There isn't as many individuals trying to do that. There wasn't, unfortunately, I'm semi-jaded of the space, and there's a stigma around it now of like, I'm going to help you build a business, your online fitness business. I immediately have a poor reaction to that, which is really interesting. So that really wasn't in existence in the 2014, 2015 era, when I was really starting to get into that side of things. It was kind of a brand new space. And so I think that the lack of stigma there and the lack of kind of, I hate to say saturation, because it's not saturation, but I think it's just there's a lot of people who are creating poor associations with that space that wasn't there. And so I didn't really have any limiting factors when I was getting into that, luckily.
Yeah, I mean, the public, I don't even say the public, because I don't know that the public at large pays attention to the fitness space at all, but it is pretty clear that the coaching the coach thing has gotten pretty hot. I mean, it's pretty cool. I've been seeing, I see, I don't know if, again, these are the algorithms, but I'm seeing more of coaching the coach advertisements than coaches looking for consumers advertisements. And I know Instagram's good with their algorithm. I don't know how good they are, but I mean,
Sure.
that seems to be kind of one way that the industry has changed. It's like I said, the perceptions of the fitness industry from all different perspectives, all different, different demographics, different populations. We're kind of always morphing and always molding that, but it seems like we've kind of gone in a little bit of a bad direction with some of these
Mm.
things. So I was wondering, what are some of the other ways that you've seen the industry change since 2013?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, certainly, yeah, the coaches helping other coaches, it's changing. But I think something I learned during my time at the Online Trainer Academy was really the barrier to entry is so low, but the turnover is going to be high with those people. Think about how many people you've seen who are going to help you hit six figures in 6 months, and then they aren't around in a year.
Yeah.
So I do think the turnover is high, but yeah, I mean, certainly the introduction of the online world and using the internet to better help people and expand our potential service offerings for trainers, for clients has probably been the biggest shift. Certainly a huge positive. Obviously during COVID, we were all kind of forced to experience that to some degree, and we had no option than to be exposed to that world, which I think is vastly positive. Because I think when we look forward, I often get asked, will the online replace the in-person, or will the group replace the one-on-one? And they're so not mutually exclusive in my eyes. It's not a matter of either or. It's a matter of what are the benefits and advantages? What are the trade-offs of this environment? What are the trade-offs of this environment? It just allows us to work with more people as fitness professionals. And so I think it's a yes to everything. Yeah. And so that's certainly one of the biggest pieces of change. I certainly think from the business perspective, the trainers coaching trainers to coach trainers, line of thinking has gotten very prominent. And it's really interesting, man. I'm curious, actually, before I keep going, I'm curious what your perspective is, because it seemed like you had some kind of initial thoughts of we're moving in a potentially bad direction. I'm curious just kind of how you see it. And
it's so hard to kind of piece this out, because I mean, we have nothing to go off of. We're a relatively new industry in the grand scheme of things. We all are also really just in the midst of social media, immersing in our, just completely becoming ubiquitous in our culture at large. So, man, I'm not by any means pessimistic about the future. I think that people like yourself, I mean, to be honest, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we didn't think it would result in a potentially better future for everybody. So, like, sure, if we thought we were headed in absolutely the wrong direction, we probably, like yourself, probably wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But there are really just, man, yeah, there's not really any way to condemn anything about the industry. Of course, like we're growing, we're maturing, we're learning things. And you're right, like the barrier to entry is so low. And I think that one way that we potentially might be able to kind of right the ship, and I think y'all are kind of doing something along these lines at Fitness Mentors, is making it a little bit more of an apprenticeship program instead of getting in and then there's people that are potentially predatory being your coaches, and you pay them and they work you through, and you may end up with a good one. You may end up with somebody that has your long-term benefits and financials and career in mind, but you also might end up with somebody that's predatory, which we know is really popular, or not popular, but common in the fitness space across the board. So maybe a little bit more of like an apprenticeship model might be a good way to kind of shape the industry over the long term in a little better direction.
Sure. Yeah, certainly. I mean, people, okay, so I mean, if we take a big step back, people needing objectively or subjectively guidance around their health, that is always going to be there. And so if we think about, okay, that's the box to check, we need to check the box of people need support, people need accountability, people want specific education, that they need guidance around their goals. The mediums in which we deliver that is what's always shifting. And so I think I'm very encouraged by the future, and because that's always going to be there. And I don't know if our nation's getting healthier or not healthier. I haven't seen the data. I would wager it's probably not heading in the direction that the fitness industry would like to see from a they would like to see it maybe from a selfishness perspective, but it's probably not moving in the right direction. So I certainly think from a demand perspective, from a need perspective, it's always going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And so what changes then is, what are the tools we use to do that? And that's probably always going to be evolving, always going to be changing. And so that's what's exciting to me. But yeah, I think the need, I mean, there's always going to be a need for that. And so whether we utilize it via group, via online, and the bad guys, the self-serving professionals, they are always going to ride to the bottom eventually.
Yeah.
We've seen some pretty great runs with people where they stay in the industry for a while, and then their downfall makes headlines. We don't see the people's downfall making headlines when nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
And so really unbelievable service and empathetic and selfless fitness professionals, there's always going to be a need for that, regardless of where the industry goes. And then we can always adapt to the tools.
Yeah, adapting to the tools is kind of the key there, but also then having that bedrock of values. What kind of, well, you could go on the existential level, what kind of person, what kind of energy do you want to be putting out in the world, but also then what kind of professional and what kind of impact are you looking for with those people. But you mentioned people are always going to need guidance, and that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I think that that's not even people are going to also always need in-person guidance. There's always going to be people there that are going to want to have that face-to-face, a couple times a week. They're going to want to come see somebody, or they may never come in. So the thought of is the digital going to take over entirely, I think is almost entirely out of the question for this industry specifically.
Totally. In fact, I think training that's based around community is on the brink to grow right now. I think COVID has snapped a lot of people back, and I think has forced to realize, hey, I actually do get a lot of benefit from being a part of a community, from seeing people face to face, from having that appointment on my calendar to go to. So there's no question about that. I mean, I think from a fitness professional standpoint, an area to focus on for the future is understanding the trade-offs of each of these environments, because they just simply solve different problems. Yeah. One person where the in-person environment could be perfect, another client, the purely online environment could be perfect. Another client, maybe they need Peloton or Mirror or something like that. Or another client, maybe it's a combo of all three, and they each solve unique problems. And so as the professional, understanding what those are and who might benefit from this environment, what are the inherent advantages and disadvantages to these environments, and that can also help craft kind of your services and how you help people and who you help. So, and that's kind of what I mean by the tool. So I think the future is just expansion. We're simply just making fitness more accessible with all these new innovations, which I think is amazing. And I know it's easy to feel threatened by that as a fitness professional and think they're trying to steal my job. They're solving a different problem. And the people who are going to want in-person training are not going to likely buy a Peloton and think this is checking all my boxes. And if it is, then in-person training isn't necessarily what they wanted. They just had a limited perspective of what's available. And so there's each of the modalities that exist right now, I believe, will remain the same. And certainly there's going to be innovations within each one, but the problem that the in-person environment solves, for instance, it can't be solved by Mirror.
Oh, no.
It can't be solved by, this online kind of coaching model in a group or whatever it may be, because there's such distinct value. And so I think just understanding what those are for each of these tools that we have available is definitely going to be a helpful mentality moving forward.
Yeah, I think that the being threatened by these other modalities, these other options that are absolutely part of our present, but also our future. And I wanted to go more into some thoughts on, where we think the industry is going. But the idea of making it more accessible is really fundamentally incongruent with being uncomfortable with that change of things moving online a little bit more, because there are going to be people that there's going to be a fuck ton of people that cannot afford in-person training. And to think that, providing more avenues and it is a bad thing, I think that's absolutely incongruent with wanting the best for the industry, wanting to empower people through fitness. I think that's exactly the opposite. In fact, actually a good example of this, and I think that it's important for you also trainers and coaches to also become aware of other possibilities as well. And I think that there's a lot of people out there laying these out, but actually I believe your chapter in Wealthy Fit Pro online training might have been your chapter. I'm not 100% sure. I was on a plane when I was reading it, so I was a little bit asleep, but I was a little bit swamped with online training at the time because I was the type of person that put way too much into it. Not
Yeah.
necessarily that that's bad, but my energy levels were absolutely getting sucked by that. So
Yes.
reading that, having a little bit more structure where it's a little bit more separated also then fosters that self-efficacy. That's kind of a secondary thing. But we have to also consider, how do we want to live as professionals? What kind of lifestyle do we want to live? And then also, how do we see ourselves in the future? Because we can work 60, 70, 80 hours a week if you want, but there are potentially other options that allow us to have a little bit more life.
100%, man. And that's such a great point, because that's actually excuse me, before you start thinking about what's going to be best for your client, you have to be thinking about, what life is this leading me to? I'm very, very a believer of, you have to operate from a full cup, and you can't fill others without yours being full. And, running the Online Trainer Academy, which really was an introduction to online training for existing coaches, people who have already been in the industry, there certainly was a hesitancy of like, I don't buy into this at all. This isn't the
Yeah.
future. I'm a traditional guy, it's like, that's completely understandable. And there's almost this acceptance of like, yeah, we work 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. or whatever. That's what trainers do. And I almost felt like there was a shame of trying to escape that and put
Oh
yourself
yeah.
first. But the reality is, man, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but putting yourself first is a necessity to helping other people to the best of your ability, not only from a physical perspective, but a mental perspective as well. I think not only from a mood and an empathy and you're able to see things from other people's perspective when you are not stressed and worrying about every aspect of your
Yeah.
own life. um, you're able to hold space for people as well. You're able to think more clearly, and then you're healthy physically. It's all conjoined. But um, there's actually a course that I'm working on now, and the first chapter is, taking care of clients starts with taking care of yourself. And
Absolutely.
that, then there's no question that and so, to your point, absolutely, when thinking about these modalities, how does it allow you to live your life?
Hmm.
Maybe online is better for you from a working perspective. Maybe you're an introvert. Maybe you don't like a lot of the inherent pieces of working in person. That's completely okay. That is me. I've been working remotely for over 7 years now, because once I started doing that, I quickly learned, this is exactly how I love to work. I
Yeah.
I hate the commute. I don't need to be face to face with people all day long. In fact, that drains me. And
Absolutely.
so, utilizing self awareness to which modality is going to make sense for me is 100% a necessity, because a lot of our clients in the past were people who, they were only coming to us because they were so burnt out, and they reached a point where they're like, this is not sustainable. I can't continue doing this. And then at that point, you have a fork in the road where you either quit or you do something else, or you have to make a change in the business. You've reached a dead end once you've hit that burnout point a lot of times. So trying to avoid that from the get-go. And this is a lot what we're doing at Fitness Mentors right now, and just saying, you don't have to get to that point in order to be successful.
Oh yeah.
You can understand that before you even get certified and before you enter the industry. You can carve this path. It's no longer that you have to go work at a gym anymore. That's not the ultimate end goal for a lot of people. And it's not even a beneficial end goal for a lot of people, I would argue. There's certain upsides. Of course, you get a lot of clients. Of course, there's upside, but there's viable paths, especially for the entrepreneurial route,
Yeah.
that doesn't even involve that arena at all. But it starts with awareness.
Absolutely. So I think that our general culture celebrating, especially the entrepreneurship space niche, whatever you want to call it, the grow at all cost mentality is a
Mm,
real quick way to burn both the candle at both ends. Like it absolutely then kind of then opens you up to being more vulnerable to making decisions based off of growth and profit than what you actually want to do. And it's also strange because it would benefit ourselves and our clients so much to learn what our own values are as a professional and how to evoke those and how to understand those,
mm,
and then you can also then communicate that better to your clients. So we live in a space, or we work in a space where we have the kind of absolute benefit of work on ourselves is also then work on our career, work on our job skills. I think earlier, back when I was mentioning my hesitance to leave the traditional route, I do think that we get mired in that. We get stuck in that. I mean, you said the 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. I mean, I've opened gyms, closed gyms, open, then close. Like, I've been there from 3:30 in the morning shooting videos before people got in there. So like, I've absolutely seen, as I'm sure you have, the
I've
long
been there,
hours.
man.
Yeah. So it's like, there's absolutely a different way to do it. But again, we're in this weird transitionary period, not just in our industry, but in our society, where we're transitioning into a virtual space. And I think we probably need to just give ourselves like maybe a decade or so. Just, take it easy on ourselves. Let's not be too hard. Let's try to make
Totally.
change, but not get too crazy about it.
Well, I think we have to take the same values we take in person and take them virtually. I especially during COVID, just the amount of talks I've given in virtual training is vast. And there's this mentality of they're two different careers, they're two different jobs. It's two different things. There's personal training and there's online training. It's like it's all coaching. Again, it's just how are we delivering our expertise? How are we delivering our help? How are we delivering this accountability? What tools are we using? Those change. But we need to take the same values of our client safety is number one. We're still empathetic. We still have really good and clear communication. We still are checking in and we have visibility. We're still there for them. The high the values that I feel like are cemented in now with good coaches in person, I feel are not always translated over to online. And maybe that's because the barrier to entry is even lower than it is for in person. You can just pop online and then post a status and say, I'm taking clients, and it's easy as that. Maybe it's because of the business coaches who are a little bit slimy and standing next to their Lamborghini saying that you don't see as much of those in person. For in-person coaches, it's online fitness coaches. That's usually what so maybe, we have created these associations with online, but in my world, man, it's so not the case. It's simply a different environment to deliver your expertise and to do the same exact things. And so a lot of my work is, let's still maintain these standards. They have to be there, and you don't change what you do when you move online. You still assess people. You still, people are like, I've been a trainer for 25 years. I have no clue how to work online. Completely understandable perspective. But it's like, well, walk me through your process. What's the first thing you do with a client? I do this. Okay, perfect. So now we need to do that same exact thing online. What tools do we need to use to deliver that? What mindset are they going to be in? How can we be proactive to get ahead of certain things because we can't be there live with them? It's just understanding the space, but it's the same exact thing. But I find, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I find those values that we hold so highly in the in-person space with the Tony Gentlecourts and the Nick Tuminellos, like the really quality coaches, the Dean Somersets type of people. Those are the exact type of people. I'm not saying them specifically, but those really quality coaches are the ones that like often have a negative view of the online space. And I think this was probably more pre-COVID because now they're kind of forced to do it. And I think a lot of them have seen the upside, but in my eyes, I'm like, you are the people who should be immediate champions of this space, because you're already a leader and have these values, and you're empathetic and you're such a quality coach. You should be leading the charge with the online space, because those values need to maintain. But I don't think they are currently, or at least from the outside perspective, or even from the fitness professional perspective.
I think that those people are maybe the most I don't want to say hesitant, like hesitant might be I'm going to use that word way too many times today, because I think it comes down to compromises. They see far too many compromises that they would have to make in order to achieve the standard that they have established based off of their own values. And I think coming back, you said standards, but I think the standards are simply just based off of your values. But also, I think you get pretty concreted. I think if you've been in the industry for decades, you get concreted, as you should, with your exclusion and inclusion criteria. So you have a very specific type of client, and maybe that those clients, or the type of service that you provide, may not be able to transfer online. But again, you've said those same values need to be carried, and I think that's absolutely true. There will be compromises, and I'm sure that a big part of what you do is helping people navigate those compromises, or avoid which ones they don't want to do the most. But
Sure.
Yeah, just coming back to the standards, exactly. What kind of experience or what kind of effect do you want to have with people? And I think that's what irks me the most is effectiveness, because what are you saying you're going to provide? What kind of service are you saying you're going to provide? And then what is the actual effect of that service? And
Yes.
it comes, I mean, you can get way into your copy and how you present yourself and marketing materials and everything like that. But I think the face to face, the conversation with somebody is absolutely, absolutely crucial. And I'm sure that a big part of kind of bridging that gap for people, because it's hard. The internet is anonymous, relatively anonymous, and that's just kind of part of it. We've both grown up with the internet, so I think we're a little bit more comfortable with it, and we understand that a little bit. But the internet being anonymous like it is, it seems impersonal. It just seems like you're disconnected from the person, and it takes a little bit more spiritual resolve and a little bit more energy, honestly. Like you said, I'm very introverted and I get drained working in person.
Sure.
Same online, but again, that's coming because I have a standard that I want to provide and level of service that I want to provide people.
Totally, man. It's self-awareness rooted in my eyes. You know, I'm introverted too. I don't
Mhm.
like talking on the phone. I don't dislike it, but it's not, I like writing. That's where I like to communicate. I'm curious, did you feel a connection to me before we spoke face to face?
Interesting. I mean, so real is the kind of idea like real, recognize real. Like I could tell that you were not. I mean, I don't know if my like litmus test is like, is this person a piece of shit right off the bat? And then like from
Sure.
from there, like that's the initial in the door, and then you go one way,
Yes.
you get better or worse from there. But I mean, it's
Absolutely.
obvious, like you said, the self-awareness piece. I think that's something that you were talking quite a bit about when I first came across your content. And that's something, I mean, I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years. The only leadership trait that I remember is know yourself and seek self-improvement, because that's the one that stuck with me the most. And I feel like you cannot get by, and especially as a fitness professional in 2022 and beyond, without becoming self-aware and looking at, okay, what are my shortcomings? And that's not to say let's beat our ass up about it, but let's work on it. Let's make a step every single day and try to get a little bit better and continuously assess and see how you can move forward. But I mean, yeah, it's
Or
pretty
just be aware
yeah.
of your shortcomings. You don't even have
Hmm.
to change them, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you have to get certain things up to a threshold of good enough if you have to use
oh yeah.
them, but a lot of things, being aware of your weaknesses, are just like, it might not be worth sharpening that sword, which is possible. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries. And then also considering you don't have an actual right, you do not have a right to the outcome. You have the
Sure.
right to do the work to try to get better, but you cannot get attached to that, because I mean, we
Yes.
live in a very our industry tends to try to be very quantitative, very
Yes.
objective, and it is the furthest thing, almost the furthest thing from an objective industry, because those are just facts and they don't really matter for people. And geez, that's another way that the industry has changed quite a bit, is the objectivity, the data, the quantification. But I know that when you were working with Online Trainer Academy and still with Fitness Mentors, even more so, I think you had a vision for what you were trying to create in the future. What are some other ways that when you're thinking, when you're dreaming, when you're writing on your dream board, what are some ways that you hope the industry will change in the future?
Man, I mean, I would love a huge mission at Fitness Mentors for me right now, and just in general. I would love to change public perception of the industry. The people that I work with at OTA for my entire career, they've been unbelievable people, unbelievable coaches. And I'm not I love spending time with non-fitness people. That's probably what I prefer to spend most of my like actual social life with. And like, just from that perspective, there's a perception of the industry that is so not my perception of the
Mm,
industry. And so trying to bridge that gap and obviously there's a lot of influential voices that have created these associations in the public. It's not that they're necessarily inherently wrong. Some of them are. um, but just how the fitness industry was built, Women's Health Mag, or all of just these huge publications that are contributing to public perception of the industry. I would love to tweak that and shape this perception of fitness as what I see it as, which is a group of genuinely empathetic, helpful, authentic, hardworking people who just want to help people. And I'm the first to say, if your motives are self-serving, it's going to be a tough road for you. you know, because you're going to hit these roadblocks where you think, all I'm doing this is for the money, or all I'm doing this is because I want to be known in the space, or whatever it may be. So that when you hit one of your inevitable valleys, you're going to be like, fuck this. This isn't worth it, because to your point, I'm not doing it for the love of it. I'm doing it for the outcome. And that's never going to last. And so I part of our mission at Fitness Mentors right now is trying to change this conversation for people who are not in the industry yet. And people who are already in the industry, that's certainly one that's a group of people to tackle. But I feel like they often have the same goal as we do, of let's try to change public perception of the industry. And so I think we need to compete with the magazines or whatever that are reaching moms at the grocery store and shaping their perspective, or you know, when you're out with friends in shaping those conversations, obviously not directly shaping those conversations, but trying to plant seeds of what the industry actually is to those people. It's not meatheads. Obviously, of course, there's meatheads in the industry. I mean, I have no problem with that, but it's not all what people think it is. It's not women's health. It's not Dr. Oz. It's not Mr. Olympia. You know, that's not the industry that I've grown to love. And so bridging that gap is probably my biggest goal right now. And I think it does start with helping the individual coach. But that's high on my wish list for things to change.
That's about as lofty as you can get, but I think that's honestly, like you said, that's really all that anybody is trying to do, because we look at, it's like having a friend that's kind of an asshole, but he's actually a really good guy. But like nobody, you know, he was an asshole once, and nobody like ever. That's what they reminded him. But it's like, no, the fitness can be such like, again, an empowering endeavor, and in a way that almost nothing else can be. It can get you through life struggles. It can make you stronger and help you prevent health issues potentially. But when, man, again, it comes down to, I have kind of felt like a little bit of an apologist for people when I'm sitting down with somebody at their first consultation. I feel like I am like, I know how you feel about fitness. I know how you feel about personal trainers.
Right.
We're going to do things a little bit differently. And you know, half the time they buy in immediately, half the time it takes a little convincing, usually with honestly, like middle-aged guys really love that hardcore balls to the wall mentality. But
sure,
that's typically, that authoritative approach is typically how it's been done. And like that so I'm glad y'all are talking it or tackling it from the professionals level, because that authoritative, that do what I say, I'm the, you know, the expert, that thing that needs to stop before they actually get into the space. Because like you said, the barrier is so small, they can just kind of roll in and start absorbing shit, and it may not be the right shit. So let's, you know, going through the Fitness Mentors will help them get the right shit. But the other side of that was, it kind of does break my heart. Like you said, you came to love the fitness industry, and that same thing with me. For all of the bad shit that I went through with it, the disordered eating patterns, the body dysmorphia, the not having a social life for a decade, I still would not change a single bit of it because of the positives that it's given me. Like I cannot think of more discouraging thing to look to the future and think I'm just going to continuously start breaking down. At some point, I'm not going to be able to physically do the things that I want to do. I can't think of like a more unfortunate circumstance. And you know, somebody, you know, that I always think of, like a middle-aged mom coming in multiple times. You know, she may have worked up the courage one more time to come into the gym, and she meets with a trainer that just drags her through shit, and she's done. That's somebody's life right there. That is a life that potentially, you know, they may have 30, 40, 50 years left, but it's going to be less fruitful, less less enjoyable for them because of that experience with that one person. So that's, I mean, that's changing that perception, that conversation is a huge I think a milestone. It would be fantastic to see that.
Totally. And it's, you know, it's a slow burn. It's a and again, just to reiterate, this is why we're trying to help people who are kind of fitness enthusiasts right now, people who love working out, who have a desire to be in the industry but aren't in it yet. You know, I think that's a really key group to target in terms of shaping a narrative for people, because it's a very, you know, it's so interesting that you have to apologize kind of right off the bat. We just assume that people view it negatively. You know, I did a lot of research over this past year about what professionals dislike about the industry and their struggles and things of that nature. And Number four, three in the list, excuse me, was public perception of like having to overcome uh, the public perception of what I do. It's either people think that I don't have a real job because I say I'm an online coach, and they're like, okay, that can be akin to saying you're an entrepreneur in 1995 or whatever, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
so you don't have a job. That's your way of saying that.
A life
Or
coach.
I have to overcome this like this misinformation, or what all publications care about that reach the masses is sensationalism. Their motive isn't our motive. Their motive is to get people interested, and to get people to look at them and to get people to click or whatever it may be. And so it's I have the Harry Potter and Voldemort scene in my mind with the wands. I'm trying to really boost that force of accuracy and boost the force of sensationalism is not the goal. Let's use it because we have to play the game. But no, the goal is accuracy. The goal is helpfulness. The goal is sustainability. The goal is not to write a headline that makes you buy the magazine. And then who cares about and then their job's done at that point. They don't care what happens after that. So yeah, it is a lofty, it's a lofty, but I just like being an influence in that sphere. I don't want to say so many people are trying to do this. I want to be a part of the movement.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we felt about Level since the beginning. Is just by no means are we the driving force behind the movement, but it's happening. It's moving. Like we're
Yes.
headed in a direction, and we're going to end up somewhere if we, and we're going to end up somewhere, and we want to just hopefully nudge that ship in a little bit of the right direction so that, 10, 15 years down the road, the industry is actually serving people in a positive way instead of generally having to apologize for past experiences.
Right.
Yeah, it's
And I do think we're in a transition right now where there is from the public perspective, there is a growing mentality of, okay, what I see on the magazine, lose 30 pounds in 30 days, I know that's wrong, or I know that's off. I think there's enough influence to be like, but I think it creates confusion in the short term. It's, I know that's off, so now I'm even more confused because I thought that was right. And now I'm being told by so many people, maybe my sister told me this, maybe I have someone in the Facebook group who was influenced, like, actually, this is really unhealthy, this isn't great, whatever it may be. I do think there's more and more influences to tell the average mom, like my mom would know that now. She knows that losing weight super fast, or like she's out of that mindset, but she's in the place where she's like, I know that's wrong, I don't know what's right.
Yeah.
And so I do think we're in this kind of limbo place right now, where it's a part of the process, though. It's unwinding what we thought we know to then establish new norms. But I think if I had to assess, it seems like we're in this kind of like, we're slowly starting to unwind without a hard destination yet.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, even more reason to keep moving in the right direction. But
no, absolutely. And I've loved it these last couple of years because we've really, I mean, there was a point when Haley and I were like, you know what, fuck it, let's just do Level and see what happens. But the whole time it's felt like we've been white knuckling it, because it's like, we don't know where the industry is going. We hope that, and it's tough because we definitely get in microcosms. And to your point earlier about hanging out with people that are not in the fitness space, I think that's incredibly important because you are getting information from people outside of your own little circle. Then, it's just feeding around to each other.
yes.
And we have to, I think, also then, since we've mentioned some of the, the negative forces that are potentially shoving the industry in a less than favorable direction, like women's work. I mean, gosh, yeah, that I make a point to read those magazines when I'm in the checkout line at a grocery store, because it's like, what kind of dog shit is happening today? And also sometimes, though, it gets me fired up again, because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
if that is I'm not going to say mainstream, but if that's what people are seeing, you're right. At the very least, it's confusing people. And then you develop this learned helplessness where you don't know what is correct and what can you do. And honestly, because this is a space where people are already usually ambivalent about making changes, that's just a nice little, a nice little box to check in the con column for change. So you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, so let's go ahead and stop, putting up more barriers for people. I think that when it comes down to it, that's what I like to try to do, and I also try to voice. I think is a good idea is to just not create more barriers for to fitness for
Exactly.
people. Just make it easier, not more difficult. That's all.
Make it easier and stop. There's no reason to have a black and white mentality with things. If somebody wants to do this versus that, then yes, it's all great. Do anything. I think lowering the barrier to just people being comfortable to exercise. That was my
Yeah.
goal
Oh
when I
yeah.
was a trainer. Is I just want you to feel excited about coming to work with me. That's literally my only goal. Once you hit that point, then we can start to get really specific on what we do. But as long as you are miserable at the gym, or as long as you dread coming here, nothing. I mean, it doesn't matter what we do until we get there. And I
Mhm.
feel the same exact way now on the fitness professional side of things. It's let's get people in the right headspace who are coming in.
Of course, of course. So to kind of just wrap things up, I wanted to put some positive information out there. So I think
Yeah,
you're in
sorry, this has
a
shifted.
no,
It,
of
it feels
course.
positive from my perspective, but
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely positive because I mean, each time you talk about something, you reveal a little something. And I like to think that every time I talk to somebody, I'll pull something because I know that I don't know everything, and it's great to hear other perspectives. And right, exactly on that note, actually, you have an interesting perspective. You've had an abnormal fitness career, to say the least. So I wanted to hear from again from your perspective, what are some of the positive forces in the industry? I know, of course, fitness mentors, if you want to say some a little bit more about what y'all are doing there, but from where you're sitting, what are some other really good resource for people, but also just positive forces?
positive forces. I mean, it's funny, man. Everybody I work, I mean,
Yeah.
I see positive forces every single day in the industry. At the Online Trainer Academy, I built a mentorship. We've helped hundreds of people. The vast, vast, vast majority of people we help one on one there are unbelievable people and coaches, and are the dozen mentors I hired there were unbelievable people and coaches. I mean, positive forces are all around in this space. I truly think the people who rise to the top of this industry are people who are not self-serving. And so I love that this industry does have a way of weeding people out who are solely doing things for themselves, who are solely in it for their own benefit. Those do slowly get weeded out. Um, from a resources perspective, it depends what people are looking for. At Fitness Mentors, we are a little bit, early in
Yeah.
the process of being in the fitness industry. So we're very much forces of around, how do you change your job? What are your first steps as a trainer? How do you utilize self-awareness to set yourself up on the right path? We are very much the entrepreneurial um, side of things. We favor building your own path and working virtually, and just really just understanding your options and the trade-offs of each, and then emboldening people to get to know themselves so that they can feel confident about the path that they take, because there's no inherent right or wrong when it comes to this stuff. It's just, who are you, what do you want to do, and now here's all of your tools you have available, what's going to make sense to use. um, Man, I mean, there's so many other positive things.
Yeah, I think that's good to just again recognize that because it can
Yeah,
be really easy to be very nihilistic, very nihilistic because there is a lot. I mean, you just get on Instagram for a bit and the nonsense that you run into pretty quickly. But again, like you absolutely, for better or for worse, can surround yourself with like-minded people. Unfortunately, it's kind of like a snowball rolling downhill. You start to accumulate, and I think the industry is going into an absolutely more positive direction just overall.
totally. Yeah, and it starts with, as to your point before we start this conversation, it starts with your values. And so when you're finding those communities, it's understand your values and what you're looking for in the community, and then go searching. They're out there, and my door is open too. If somebody's listening to this and literally doesn't know where to start, obviously I know you would have great recommendations, Josh, yourself, but I'm always happy to chat with people or field questions, or this is why I'm on this podcast right now.
Yeah,
Which, by the way,
absolutely.
I totally felt a connection with you before we ever spoke on the phone, which is why I asked, because I was like, I already liked you. I knew what you stood for. I understood your motives, at least my best guess. And I felt like we connected, just and because I noticed things that didn't require having to see you face to face. You were genuine in your response. I could tell you were thoughtful with how you spoke to me. You cared about how I would perceive your work, and you can do that too. Anybody can do that, and you can show people you care, and it starts with caring. Like that's the first piece of the pie, is to actually care about the people that you're speaking to. Even if it's just a random person who sends you a message or a DM asking a question, give a fuck about them. That goes such a long way.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for the people like yourself who have been in the industry for a while, even separate from working professionally as fitness mentors. But every single interaction that you have with a younger professional can be absolutely career changing, path changing. Because absolutely. I mean, speaking with you a little bit before we talked in person and everything like that, it was absolutely clear that we had similar values and that we wanted. I mean, it comes down to really like, I don't know how much you can really sense this right away, but where do you want the industry to go, and what do you hope for the space and the people within it? And it's really obvious when those methods and that end goal are at least somewhat aligned to where you can collaborate. And I mean, that's been huge. I mean, every single step that we've made has been, actually, I remember from your background, with the PTDC, just asking, put it out there, see if people are, give you feedback and everything like that. For the most part, I've gotten left on read quite a bit, but for the most part, people are going to be willing to, give you some feedback, give you some advice, and help you along the way, even to the point where there's been people that have been a dick about it. But when I look back, I'm like, oh, that was great advice. I appreciated it.
Sure. And if someone leaves you on red, what's the downside? I posted this quote recently that I really loved. That was, if the only risk is a bruised ego, there's no risk. And I try to remind myself of that all the time, because it's like a lot of people feel limited by like, well, if I put this out there and nobody responds, I'm gonna feel like shit. Or if I send this message to this person and they ignore me, well, that's gonna like make me feel pretty down or whatever it may be. But it's if it's all upside in those areas.
I don't know, Alex, did we just get rejected enough, like going up like high school, middle school, high school, like that we just got used to it? But yeah, it is all of that you're sacrificing, all that you're risking. All that you're risking is a bruised ego. You're exactly right. It does not matter at the end of the day. You're gonna, and the old saying, every step no is one step closer to yes. So you're just gonna get there eventually. But anyways, Alex, it was great, as always, to talk with you, man. I hope to talk to you again in the future, but I think this is going to be a great episode, and there's going to be a lot of good information for people, man.
Awesome, Josh. Yeah, really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me.